Our invocation this evening will be offered by Tim Allison, field interviewer for Vital Research. If you would please stand for the invocation, remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Dear God, we thank you for the opportunity that you have given us here tonight. We are humbled by the task which is set before us, and we seek wisdom beyond our own. Help us this night to receive that wisdom with open and grateful hearts. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, and liberty and justice for all. Madam City Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmembers Huff.
Here.
Perkins.
Here.
Doherty.
Here.
DeLucy.
Here.
Robertson.
Here.
Van Camp.
Here.
Mayor Ware.
Here. This takes us to the consent agenda. Mayor Pro Tem.
Mayor Weir, I move to approve the reports and recommendations of the city manager. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any items any council member wishes pulled for separate consideration?
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
18822.
Okay, any others? Okay, hearing none, Madam City Clerk, will you please call the roll on the consent agenda minus Resolution 18822?
Councilmembers Huff.
Yes.
Perkins.
Yes.
Doherty.
Yes.
DeLucy.
Yes.
Robertson.
Yes.
Van Camp.
Yes.
Mayor Ware.
Yes. Councilmember DeLucy.
It's been a while, Madam Mayor, since we took a look at this suggestion. We tabled it from our last meeting in mid-December, and I wondered if we could just have a little refresher course on what this is.
Okay, Mr. City Manager? Okay.
Yep, I'm good. We're still here. As the councilman said, it's been a couple of weeks since we last talked about this. So as a refresher, state statute requires a city, a municipality to have a set commission for tax increment financing projects. So those are comprised of representatives from the municipality and from the other taxing jurisdictions, specifically the county, the school district, and the library district. That same provision does not apply to other economic incentives which would impact those same jurisdictions. We've heard quite a few rumblings about legislation coming down the pipeline that might try to supersede city authority and try to restrict these other taxing jurisdictions from participating in these incentives. So I believe it was the mayor's intent to try to head that off by offering an opportunity for these jurisdictions to become involved in those processes. Councilman, at the last meeting, I believe specifically you asked about the public hearing component. I'll ask the deputy city attorney to correct me if I'm wrong here, but in revisiting that issue, while state statute does require a public hearing for the TIF portions, it does not for those other incentives. So with the recent apartment project out on 39th Street, we had that because of the rezoning issue, but not because of the incentives tied to that. So right now we don't have that opportunity unless the taxing jurisdictions are participating or signing up to speak or something like that. We don't have that opportunity. Did I miss anything there?
Yes, Colin Dedeker. Just to be clear, I did talk with our bond counsel about this, and even when the statutes, which some of the statutes don't require an actual public hearing, their processes are to over-provide notice, over-provide opportunities for hearing. So there's, as part of their process, they would always, even when it's not required, have some opportunity for a hearing. The statutes, though, do require, even when there's not a hearing, notice to the taxing jurisdictions, an opportunity for them to give input, and specifically that the city take due consideration of their input. But what I've been assured by the bond counsel is they don't look at it as a limiting type thing, the statutes. They want to provide the notice, over provide the opportunity to be heard. and they will do those types of things whenever these types of bonds are coming up and that kind of thing.
When you say they will, who will?
Well, the bond council, through their procedures, working with the city staff, we will have hearings and that kind of thing, so that the notice will be given.
To
They'll
the
have
public?
This is to the taxing jurisdictions.
Okay.
So the
So
public,
the-
what's
the ones
written in
we're dealing with.
in the resolution is that there will be opportunity for public hearing both at the commission level and at the city council level.
Yes, during the process of going through the bonds and giving notice, allowing the taxing jurisdictions an opportunity to give feedback, and the process for the city council to give due consideration. The bond council, as part of their procedures and working with city staff, will have hearings so that you can give the due consideration. It's basically, it's de facto that there will be hearings. So there's nothing wrong with the motion, but there's also, there will be ample opportunities for the taxing jurisdictions. In fact, some of the statutes provide for only giving notice to certain ones. Bond counsel indicated to me they will give the notice to all taxing jurisdictions that they think might be affected, even if the statute itself doesn't directly require it.
So if I recall correctly, the council member's question was about the public's ability to come and speak before this Economic Development Incentives Commission that's been provided for, as well as the opportunity to come and speak before the council in the resolution that
Well,
has been
and the
forwarded.
public would
Yeah.
be able to do it just as a
Yeah.
matter of course
Right.
for any hearings or any meetings that we have.
Right.
Section 9 talks about the council will hold a public hearing to consider protests, objections, comments, and other evidence presented at the hearing. What hearing? The hearing that was done in front of this commission, or the hearing that we're going to have in front of this council. I do not want to be restricted in my review by the evidence that somebody else presented that I had no input on.
Well, which section is?
Section 9 of the resolution.
I can help.
Oh, of the,
Yeah,
okay.
I think what the intent was, because after your question, I know they went back and made some modifications to that, Councilwoman. What this is saying is that there would be, if this passes and this commission is expanded to cover these other economic incentives, there's going to be the meeting, there's going to be the dialogue, the same as what a TIF commission meeting currently looks like. But then there will also, what the resolution is stating is that there will also be a full public hearing to consider what's happened at the body of evidence and others who want to still come forward and provide additional testimony at that time.
Okay, so the TIF commission is televised. Will this be televised?
Yes.
The TIF statutes delineate very specific things that the committee needs to look at and make findings on before they approve a TIF approval process kind of thing, okay? We don't have anything here saying what the committee's going to be looking at. That concerns me, okay? Section 2.3 talks about one member being appointed in any manner agreed upon by the affected districts to represent all other districts levying ad valorem taxes within the selected redevelopment area. I don't know what that means. I really do not want to delegate my responsibility to the citizens of this town. They elected me. They didn't elect a body of people that we don't even know who they're going to be and what they're going to be looking at and the factors they have to follow. I am very much voting no.
Any other comments or questions on 1822?
Madam,
Yes.
Thanks for clearing that up, Colin.
Councilman Perkins?
thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, my thought is with hopes of future development and what that looks like anywhere here in Independence, I'm envisioning some new development out east where incentives may be on the table to look at. If things get going good, we get some good movement, some good forward motion out there, and we have multiple projects coming forward. How will that look? I'm afraid that this could possibly slow any process down, is a concern that I have. How often will they meet? Will they meet as determined or as often as need be? I mean, 18 people is a large number to get together. Right now, we don't have that problem, but in the future, I would like to have that problem.
So the 18 people, it's not that many. It depends on where the project is as to which school districts will be represented. So if it's a project in the independent school district, they'll have representatives just as they do on the TIF commission if it's in Fort Osage, Blue Springs, depending on which library district it might be in. So not all of those people will be there. It will be where the development project that is being considered, which district it is, which is exactly mirroring what the TIF commission would do. So they would meet as needed to review these incentive packages.
Okay. So all this group here will not meet in their entirety then, just specific? Okay.
Anything else? Yes.
Could one of you, either mayor or city manager, comment on how this will head off some of the things that are coming before the state legislature? I know that there's been some talk about them limiting TIFs and NIDs and SIDs, and the fact that we may not be able to have or include taxes from certain taxing jurisdictions like the schools, or maybe even the libraries.
Sure.
So can you comment on that? And that has already come, I think, to past sessions of the legislature. So I'm just asking for some input and how this might head that off.
As you say, Councilmember, there's been a lot of legislation filed the last several years trying to either eliminate or abolish these type of incentives or greatly restrict how these are awarded for future projects. And looking at the pre-filings this year, Mr. Mayfield out of our office has been keeping me abreast of that. It looks like it's the same story, different session in terms of trying to head some of that off. So I believe what the intent and hope for is here, and what I could liken this to is several years ago with Senate Bill 572, when our code enforcement authority was greatly under attack. This city was able to go to the Missouri General Assembly and say, this works in independence, this process, this fine structure, with great reliability and regularity. Why don't you give what we're doing a shot? We understand it's not working in other parts of the state, but it's working here. Why don't you give this a shot? And by and large, give or take a few dollars in the fine structure, the process you see adopted in state statute is now the independence code enforcement process and fine structure. So given the success we had with that, I believe it's the mayor's intent to try to be able to say same thing. If this really does ever gain traction or gain steam, to be able to say, here's a solution, the independence model that worked for us, where we were able to collaborate with these taxing jurisdictions, formalize their voice, give them the opportunity to go on the record and provide input, still comes to the council, still council has that authority to consider what the advisory board has put forward, but still has that final voice on whether or not these incentives should be awarded for that project.
Thanks.
John Mayfield and I serve on the Chamber Public Policy Committee, where we've been involved with developing the Chamber's legislative policy. This is an item that came forward by one of the taxing jurisdictions, one of the library districts, seeking support for a opportunity for certain taxing jurisdictions to be exempted from these types of incentives. This has come forward before in state legislation, and frankly, we have school districts and taxing jurisdictions in independence that would love to see economic development happening in their district, so aren't necessarily in favor of a state law that would exempt them, or unless there was an option for them to choose not to be exempted. I think, John, if you wouldn't mind coming forward, since you're been part of these conversations. You know, this is something that has been discussed with these other taxing jurisdictions in our Economic Development Council and Chamber of Commerce in developing this commission. And I'm going to ask John Mayfield, since he's our resident expert on legislation, to speak to this.
I can speak, Mayor. John Mayfield, Community Liaison Specialist, City Manager's Office. There have been several bills, as you mentioned, filed in the last couple of years that will, if passed, would exempt or reduce school district responsibility in a TIF, that they would be able to carve out less and less area of a TIF, be less responsible for. We've seen probably about 10 or 15 bills like that filed this year. They've been filed the last several years. Most of them have not even gotten a committee hearing. There are some folks in the legislature that are very anti-TIF. That is their philosophy. And so they file those bills every year, and we do have to stay on top of it, because you just never know. You get the right committee chairman, you get a long bill, they can add an amendment to a bill that can greatly reduce our ability to do TIF or a SID or a NID or anything of that nature. So it's just another good situation, another tool in the toolbox to help us work with our legislators of Jefferson City, show why we need these incentives. I hope that's.
Thank you. I would say, I don't know if I would necessarily characterize this as a way to head off any legislation. I think it's an example to show leadership about how local municipalities can address these issues, collaborate with the other taxing jurisdictions, allow the other taxing jurisdictions to have a voice and a vote in bringing these forward to the council. Ultimately, all decisions end with this body, and so as with our TIF Commission, our Planning Commission, our Public Utilities Advisory Board, our Advisory Board on Health, they get to hear testimony, they get to hear from the citizens, they make recommendations to this council, and ultimately the decision lies with us. But I think that this sets a model of how we can work through these things for the benefit of our community, as this legislation may or may not continue to move forward in Jefferson City. It allows us to show that these decisions can be made at the local level and do not need to necessarily be mandated at the state level.
Mr. City Manager, as we sit here today and we have a Chapter 100 bond request, what's the procedure?
Right now, a developer would come in and make that request for incentives. City would look at that specific request, would negotiate with the developer on both the percentage and duration of that particular incentive that was being requested, until we can find, or hopefully find, some kind of agreed upon amount that both parties feel comfortable with. Once that formal proposal is put together, we send tax impact analysis to all the taxing jurisdictions so that they're aware that this request is being made and what that's going to mean to their bottom line. And then we come forward to the council with that plan for your consideration.
If this passes, how will that change?
That process I just described will be formalized in the form of having those taxing jurisdictions meet, hear presentations corporately rather than individually. So instead of us putting it in the mail and sending it off to them and perhaps calling them up or perhaps getting a phone call back, it's going to formalize and standardize that. So these taxing jurisdictions are sitting in here corporately like the TIF Commission would, hear that presentation, be able to ask questions of the developer. I would anticipate they'd probably question staff about why this amount and why for this duration, et cetera, and eventually make a recommendation that would be incorporated into the staff report to the council.
So the difference is?
Formalizing that so that these agencies would be on the record about what their support is. I don't know if you recall, when we were considering this apartment project, the most recent Chapter 100, one of the council members asked of me what was the input from the Blue Springs School District, and at that meeting I had to say, I don't really feel comfortable going on the record, because all we did was send this to them, and they came in and had a general discussion with us about their philosophy, since there's a Superintendent Kinder's return, with their philosophy about economic incentives, but never got an official, we support this, or we're opposed to this, or we're neutral on it. It was more conversational. This would require a vote, either affirmative or opposed to, so we would have some sort of on-the-record indication of how these taxing jurisdictions feel about that specific incentive for that specific project.
This resolution does that?
Correct.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions? Councilmember, would you like to make a motion?
Move to approve 18822.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Huff,
Yes.
Perkins.
Yes.
Doherty. DeLucy.
No.
Robertson.
Yes.
Van Camp.
Yes.
Mayor Weir.
Yes, resolution passes. Okay, this takes us to our second readings. Madam City Clerk.
These next bills will receive their second reading and be considered by the council. Bill number 18-122, an ordinance finding, determining, and declaring the necessity of acquiring general utility easements and anchor pole easements for the substation E to substation F 69 kV transmission line rebuild, project number 7020-1603-3406-1714, authorizing the negotiation and eminent domain proceedings if necessary, approving the plans and specifications for the project, authorizing the use of experts as needed, authorizing and directing the execution of documents and the payment of funds to property owners or others holding property rights in conjunction with the project. Second and final reading.
Is there any discussion on this bill? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Huff.
Yes.
Perkins.
Yes.
Doherty.
Yes.
DeLucy.
Yes.
Robertson.
Yes.
Van Camp.
Yes.
Mayor Weir.
Yes, ordinance passes.
Bill number 18-123, an ordinance authorizing a contract with Truman Heritage Habitat for Humanity for the administration of the Independence Power and Light Weatherization Program for low-income Independence homeowners in the amount not to exceed $100,000. Second and final reading.
Is there any discussion on this bill? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Huff.
Yes.
Perkins.
Yes.
Doherty.
Yes.
DeLucy.
Yes.
Robertson.
Yes.
Van Camp.
Yes.
Mayor Weir.
Yes, ordinance passes.
Bill number 18-124, an ordinance authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement between the City of Independence, acting through its municipal utility, Independence Power and Light, and Google Fiber Missouri, LLC, for pole attachments. This will have no effect on any tax revenues or general revenues. Second and final reading.
Mr. City Manager, I know I brought this up when we had the first reading on this, but it's been several weeks and we've had a lot of holidays and vacations in between. I want to be very, very clear about this. Google Fiber is a product that our citizens have been very interested in bringing to Independence for as long as I've been on this council. This does not bring Google Fiber to Independence. It does not anticipate that Google Fiber is coming to Independence. In order for Google Fiber to continue to build out their network in Kansas City and Raytown, they need our poles to do that.
Correct.
And what is the, and if you could just remind us, how much are they paying for our pole attachments?
I'd ask our Director of Utilities, Mark Randall, to come forward and just remind us of that fee schedule very quickly.
Hi, Mark Randall, Assistant City Manager. I have our Director of Engineering here, Acting Director Mitch Kreisa here. So if you want any specific details on it, it's about a $10 attachment fee.
Okay.
It's like 10 poles. It just happens to be some poles we have that they want to attach to, and it's our standard pole attachment agreement. I don't know if there's anything else to add.
That's good enough.
All right, thank you.
I just, like I said, when the words Google Fiber come up in this town, people get excited. So I just want everybody to be clear that this is in no way in any indication that Google Fiber is going to begin negotiating with the City of Independence to bring their service to our city. They are continuing to build out their network in Kansas City and Raytown and need our poles in order to do that. Now, if we were to, once again, through state statute, if we were to vote against this ordinance, they would be able to do it anyway.
Right.
Okay, very good. May I say any other comments or questions? Madam City Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Huff,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
Doherty,
Yes.
DeLucy,
Yes.
Robertson, Van Camp,
No.
Mayor Ware.
Yes. Ordinance passes.
Bill number 18-125, an ordinance finding, determining, and declaring the necessity of acquiring sanitary sewer easements and temporary construction and grading easements for the Arrowhead Shopping Center Sanitary Sewer Main Replacement Project, number 703-01703, authorizing the negotiation and eminent domain proceedings if necessary, approving the plans and specifications for the project, authorizing the use of experts as needed, authorizing and directing the execution of documents and payment of funds to property owners or others holding property rights in conjunction with the project. Second and final reading.
Is there any discussion on this bill? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Huff,
Yes.
Perkins,
Yes.
Doherty,
Yes.
DeLucy,
Yes.
Robertson,
Yes.
Van Camp,
Yes.
Mayor Ware.
Yes, ordinance passes. Okay, I'm sorry. This takes us to our first readings.
These next bills received their first reading tonight and their second reading and considered by the council at the next regular meeting. Bill number
It'll be January 22nd because of the Martin Luther King holiday.
Bill number 19-001, an ordinance amending the zoning district map as to two tracts of ground located at 20226 East R.D. Mize Road and 2800 South Little Blue Parkway from District R6 Single Family Residential, O1 Office Residential, and C1 Neighborhood Commercial to BP Business Park in Independence, Jackson County, Missouri. Bill number 19-002, an ordinance amending the zoning district map at 909 and 911 South Chrysler Avenue from District I-1 Industrial to C1 Neighborhood Commercial in Independence, Jackson County, Missouri. Bill number 19-003, an ordinance amending the zoning district map for 17301 East 32nd Street from District 01 Office Residential to C2 General Commercial in Independence, Jackson County, Missouri. Bill number 19-004, an ordinance approving a preliminary development plan for Cargo Largo located at 3232 South Newland Road. Bill number 19-005, an ordinance vacating a portion of one water line easement south of 32nd Street and west of M291 on the Star Fuel, formerly King Kong subdivision, property lying on the northeast quarter of Section 18, Township 49, Range 31 West, Independence, Jackson County, Missouri.
Okay, thank you very much. We have no citizens signed up to speak tonight, so this takes us to council member comments. I'll start on my right with Councilmember Doherty.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Nothing this evening.
Councilmember Perkins.
Nothing this evening, Mayor.
Councilmember Huff.
Nothing this evening.
Councilmember DeLucy.
I understand. I attended a Kentucky Hills meeting over the holiday, and there's a proposal coming up in front of council in a couple of weeks. And one thing I heard at this meeting that I'm bringing it up so you can bring it up at that time. They're having sanitary sewer problems out there. And I did not realize that, and I'd like to hear a little bit more about that, if it fits in just naturally anyway. I would appreciate that.
We'll do that.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councilman Robertson.
Thank you, Mayor. I have actually two things tonight. One is that I just wanted to update the council a little bit as to what we're doing with the mental health issues. We had talked about that a month or so ago. We've had 2 meetings, and we're planning a 3rd meeting sometime in February. There's a good group that I have pulled together, and we'll probably codify that at some point as to a citizens advisory committee or something like that. But we're moving ahead. We have a member of that committee that's on the Independence Police Force that is the one that's certified in that, dealing with mental health issues. So there's a lot going on there. There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot going on around us, including the state level, that's affecting us. And I've learned a lot, and at some point I'll share a lot of that with you, but it gets pretty complicated. So that was one of the things I just wanted to update you. That's in process, and we'll be bringing a lot more back to you, hopefully within the next 3 or 4 months. The second is that I think all of us received this letter from the Advisory Board of Health, Independence Advisory Board of Health. And I had a short conversation with Dr. Potts, who's on that board, about this, and their recommendations from that board was to update our clean air ordinance. And so I would like to make a motion that we put this in the form of a resolution and put it on our agenda at a future meeting. It may take it may take a few weeks, it may take a month, whatever it takes, but maybe in consultation with the Board of Health.
Councilman, I did receive that. I did have an opportunity to talk with Christina Heinen regarding some of the details of that. I would recommend, rather than putting on a form of a resolution, why don't we put it on a study session agenda so we can talk through some of those recommendations?
I'd be fine with that.
If you wouldn't mind amending your motion.
Okay, then I would ask that we put it on a study session agenda for our future discussion. Thank you.
Okay.
That's all, Mayor.
It's been moved and seconded, since you made it in the form of the motion and put that on. Do we have room on our agenda for next week to add that, or do you want to wait until to the end of the month?
We will, if it's okay with the council, we may wait at least 2 weeks just to schedule, as these are volunteer advisory Board of Health members, so that we
Okay.
get that appropriately teed up for the council.
Okay.
It might be good to invite them to come, or some of the board to
Yep.
come too, yeah.
That's fine. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Huff.
Yes.
Perkins.
Yes.
Doherty.
Yes.
DeLucy.
Yes.
Robertson.
Yes.
Van Camp.
Yes.
Mayor Ware.
Yes. Anything else, Councilman?
No, that's it.
Okay.
Thanks.
Councilman Van Camp?
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
Okay. As many of you know, most of you know, we have formed a council committee to look at our IPL utility rates. We have had 3 meetings. That committee consists of myself, Councilman Huff, and Councilman Van Camp. We've had wonderful participation from the public, so we want to thank them for coming and showing their interest. And I think some very helpful information from our staff to help us really, understand our situation. So we're going to continue to meet. We've been meeting roughly about every 2 weeks. Our next meeting will be scheduled here shortly. Those are all posted. They are open to the public. The agenda for the next meeting is going to focus on economic development. So I just want to thank those of you who have been attending and giving your input, and remind people that those are certainly open to the public and you're welcome to attend. Mr. City Manager, anything else this evening?
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Okay, we are adjourned.